The massive space station drifted silently through the void, its crystal walls catching the light of distant stars. Inside the Great Hall, beings from across the galaxy had gathered for what they believed would be a routine meeting. The air buzzed with different languages and the soft hum of translation devices. Ambassador Kilvan stepped forward onto the raised platform at the center of the chamber. His reptilian skin gleamed under the bright lights as he raised his clawed hands for attention. Behind him, a shimmering hologram appeared showing a small blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. "My fellow council members," Kilvan began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, "today I bring you an opportunity that will benefit all our civilizations. Behold the third planet of a yellow star system on the outer rim of the galaxy." The assembled aliens leaned forward in their seats, tentacles, claws, and various appendages tapping with interest. Resource-rich worlds were always welcome news, especially ones that seemed easy to claim. "Our scouts have completed their preliminary survey," Kilvan continued, gesturing toward the rotating planet. "The inhabitants call their world Earth. They are a young species, barely having discovered how to leave their own atmosphere. Their technology is primitive at best. They still use chemical propulsion for space travel and burn fossil fuels for energy." A series of images flashed across the hologram showing human cities, vehicles, and what appeared to be military installations. To the alien observers, everything looked quaint and harmless. Small metal vehicles crawling along predetermined paths, simple aircraft that seemed to barely stay airborne, and weapons that looked like toys compared to galactic standard armaments. "As you can see," Kilvan said with confidence, "their military capabilities are laughable. They have divided themselves into nearly 200 separate political entities, constantly squabbling among themselves. No unified command structure, no advanced defensive systems, no energy shields or plasma weapons. A single hegemony battle cruiser could pacify an entire continent." Murmurs of approval rippled through the audience. The Khoranian delegate clicked his mandibles in agreement, while representatives from the Silicon Coalition nodded their crystalline heads enthusiastically. Easy conquests were rare in the galaxy, and this seemed almost too good to be true. "The planet itself is incredibly rich in resources," Kilvan continued, warming to his subject. "Abundant water, rare minerals in the crust, a perfect atmosphere for most of our species with minor modification. The local population could provide an excellent workforce once properly integrated into our systems." Several delegates were already calculating profit margins and discussing territorial divisions among themselves. The hegemony's military reputation was well established, and their invasion proposals typically received quick approval from the council. But in the shadowy observation section reserved for the most ancient species, a figure stirred. Ambassador Nalthara of the Kethera race had been sitting motionless throughout the presentation, her massive eyes fixed on the holographic display. Her people had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across 3 complete galactic cycles, surviving through careful observation and meticulous planning rather than aggressive expansion. Slowly, with the deliberate grace of extreme age, Nalthara rose from her seat. The chamber gradually fell silent as other delegates noticed her movement. The Kethera rarely spoke during council sessions, preferring to observe and analyze. When they did contribute, other species had learned to listen carefully. "Honored colleagues," Nalthara said, her voice carrying an odd harmonic quality that made translation devices strain to interpret her meaning. "I must respectfully request that this council delay any military action until additional research can be presented." Ambassador Kilvan's scales rippled with annoyance. "With respect, Ambassador Nalthara, what additional research could possibly be needed? The target is primitive and divided. This is exactly the type of straightforward operation that maximizes benefit while minimizing risk." "That is precisely why we should proceed with caution," Nalthara replied calmly. "In my species' experience, situations that appear too simple often contain hidden complexities that can prove catastrophic if overlooked." The council speaker, a massive gas-filled creature from the deep space regions, inflated his speaking chamber to address the assembly. "Ambassador Nalthara, do you have specific intelligence that contradicts the hegemony's findings?" "I have spent considerable time analyzing all available data on this species," Nalthara said, her ancient eyes reflecting the holographic light. "What I have discovered suggests that our understanding of these humans may be fundamentally flawed. I believe a comprehensive presentation of my findings would be valuable before any irreversible decisions are made." The chamber erupted in whispered conversations as delegates debated among themselves. Some supported proceeding with the invasion as planned, eager to claim their share of a new world's resources. Others, particularly the older species, remembered previous encounters where incomplete intelligence had led to disaster. Ambassador Kilvan's confidence began to waver slightly. The Kethera's reputation for thorough analysis was legendary, and their warnings had saved the galaxy from costly mistakes in the past. Still, he had invested considerable political capital in this proposal. The council speaker's voice boomed across the chamber once again. Very well. The floor recognizes Ambassador Nalthara. You may present your research findings regarding the human species. As the chamber lights dimmed and new holographic projectors activated around Nalthara's position, a sense of unease began to creep through the assembly. None of the delegates could have imagined that their understanding of warfare, survival, and the very nature of intelligent life was about to be completely shattered by what they were about to learn. The holographic display flickered to life around Ambassador Nalthara, casting an eerie blue glow across the silent council chamber. The first images showed Earth from orbit, then zoomed down to show sprawling human cities with their geometric patterns of roads and buildings. Everything looked normal and peaceful. When our research team first observed this species, we saw what appeared to be a typical developing civilization. Nalthara began, her voice steady and calm. Bipedal mammals going about their daily activities. Building structures, operating vehicles, gathering in social groups. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance. The aliens in the chamber leaned back in their seats, relaxing slightly. This seemed to confirm Ambassador Kilvan's earlier assessment about the humans being primitive and harmless. But then the images changed. The display now showed a human male named June running along a dusty path. He had been running for hours, his breathing steady and controlled. Sweat covered his dark skin, but his pace never slowed. The timestamp in the corner showed he had been moving continuously for over 6 hours. This individual is engaged in what humans call a marathon, Nalthara explained. He will continue running for over 4 hours more before reaching his destination. This is considered recreational activity among their species. Several delegates shifted nervously in their seats. Most galactic species could sprint for short bursts, but sustained movement over such distances would quickly exhaust them. The scene shifted to show another human, a young woman named So Young, scaling a vertical rock wall that stretched hundreds of meters into the sky. She used only her bare hands and feet, with no artificial assistance or safety equipment. Her movements were fluid and confident as she found tiny cracks and ledges to grip. This human is ascending a mountain face that would challenge our best military climbers even with full equipment, Nalthara continued. She does this for entertainment during her rest periods from work. Ambassador Kilvan's scales began to change color, a sign of growing anxiety among his species. These may be exceptional individuals, he protested. Surely the average human is not capable of such feats. Nalthara's expression remained neutral. Our data shows these abilities are common throughout their population. In fact, these examples are considered average for their species. But the truly concerning information relates to their hunting behaviors. New footage appeared showing early humans pursuing a large animal across an African plain. The humans moved at a steady jog while the animal, resembling a deer, sprinted away at high speed. The animal quickly tired and slowed to a walk, then the humans caught up and it ran again. This pattern continued for hours. Humans evolved as persistence predators, Nalthara explained. They would chase prey animals for days without stopping until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. No other known species has developed this hunting strategy because it requires impossible levels of endurance. The chamber was now completely silent except for the nervous breathing of various alien species. The implications were beginning to dawn on them. But surely, Ambassador Kilvan said, his voice now noticeably higher in pitch, their military capabilities remain primitive compared to galactic standards. The holographic display shifted again, this time showing various human conflicts throughout their history. A human commander named Hosuk appeared on screen, directing his soldiers from a position that should have been impossible to defend. Enemy forces surrounded them on 3 sides, outnumbering them by at least 20 to 1. Yet somehow Hosuk was using the terrain itself as a weapon. He had positioned his troops in a narrow valley where the enemy's superior numbers meant nothing. When it began to rain, he used the mud and poor visibility to launch surprise attacks. When the sun came out, he used the shadows of the rocks to hide his movements. Notice how this human turns every disadvantage into an advantage, Nalthara pointed out. The rain that should have weakened his position becomes a tool. The rocks that should have trapped his forces become shields and hiding places. Another scene showed a human woman named Daun leading a small group of only 50 soldiers against an army of over 500. By the end of the battle, her tiny force had somehow completely destroyed the larger enemy. She had done this by convincing the enemy that they were being attacked by a much larger force, causing them to panic and fight among themselves. Humans appear to view warfare as both an art form and a scientific discipline, Nalthara continued. They study every defeat in detail, learning from their mistakes and adapting their strategies. They refuse to accept that any situation is truly hopeless. The display showed human military academies where young officers studied battles from thousands of years ago, analyzing what went wrong and what went right. They memorized the tactics of ancient generals and adapted them for modern weapons. They ran endless simulations preparing for every possible scenario. Most species develop military doctrine based on their strengths, Nalthara observed. Humans develop military doctrine based on turning their weaknesses into weapons. They assume they will be outnumbered, outgunned, and in an impossible situation. Then they plan how to win anyway. The council chamber had grown so quiet that the hum of the space station's life support system seemed loud in comparison. Every delegate was staring at the holographic display with a mixture of fascination and growing dread. Ambassador Kilvan's confident posture had completely collapsed. His earlier enthusiasm for a quick and easy conquest was rapidly being replaced by something much closer to terror. Ambassador Nalthara's face became darker as she prepared to reveal the most shocking information yet. Her ancient fingers moved across the control panel, and suddenly the peaceful blue image of Earth transformed into a detailed scientific analysis. Numbers and charts appeared in bright red text, filling the air around the holographic planet. The first thing that appeared was Earth's gravity rating. Then came atmospheric pressure readings, radiation levels from the nearby star, and geological activity measurements. Each number that appeared caused more gasps and worried whispers from the assembled aliens. Esteemed council members, Nalthara said slowly, her voice carrying the weight of terrible revelation, I must inform you that the planet Earth has been officially classified as a Class 12 death world. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Gasps of horror echoed through the chamber. The delegate from the Crystalline Silicon Coalition actually fell backward in his chair. Several representatives from species that lived in controlled environments immediately activated their emergency life support systems, their breathing apparatus humming to life as if the mere knowledge of such a world could somehow contaminate the air around them. Ambassador Kilvan's confident posture crumbled completely. His reptilian scales, which had been a healthy green color throughout his presentation, began shifting to a sickly pale yellow that indicated extreme distress among his people. Forgive me, Ambassador Nalthara, interrupted the council speaker, his gas-filled body pulsing with agitation. But surely there must be some mistake in the classification system. No intelligent life could possibly evolve on a world rated higher than Class 8. Nalthara's expression remained calm, but her eyes held a hint of the fear that was spreading through the chamber. To provide context for those unfamiliar with the classification system, she continued, most of our civilizations require full environmental protection suits to survive on a Class 7 world for even a few hours. Exposure to a Class 9 environment would kill most known species within minutes. She paused, letting this information sink in before delivering the devastating conclusion. Humans not only evolved on a Class 12 death world, but they consider it a beautiful, peaceful paradise that they call their home. The holographic display shifted to show a human male named Hyunwoo diving into what appeared to be a large body of water. The environmental readings alongside the image revealed that the liquid was actually a highly corrosive salt solution that would burn through the skin of most galactic species in seconds. Yet Hyunwoo was swimming in it for pleasure, his face showing obvious enjoyment as he moved through the deadly substance. This human is engaging in recreational activity in a saline solution so corrosive that it would dissolve most of our ship's hull plating, Nalthara explained matter-of-factly. He considers this relaxing. The next image showed a human woman named Unji walking across a landscape of white frozen ground, with readings indicating temperatures that would instantly freeze most known life forms solid. She was wearing minimal protection, just thin layers of fabric, and appeared to be enjoying herself as she moved through the deadly environment. This individual is traveling through conditions that would flash freeze most council members in under 30 seconds, Nalthara continued. She has chosen to do this as a hobby during her vacation time. But perhaps the most disturbing revelation came when Nalthara activated a new section of the display showing human entertainment media. Images flashed by showing humans fighting giant monsters, surviving in impossible situations, and facing odds that would terrify seasoned galactic military commanders. Their fiction is particularly revealing, she said, highlighting a story where humans battled creatures that could destroy entire planets. What they consider entertainment involves scenarios that our military strategists would classify as absolute nightmare situations. They create these stories for fun, to relax after their daily activities. The display showed humans dreaming up scenarios where they fought against impossible odds, where their entire species was threatened with extinction, where they had to survive in environments even more hostile than their home world. And in these stories, the humans always found a way to win through determination, creativity, and sheer refusal to give up. Ambassador Kilvan tried desperately to find some reassurance in the situation. But surely, he said, his voice now shaking noticeably, their primitive technology must limit their capabilities. They cannot pose a real threat to our advanced civilizations. Nalthara turned to look directly at him, and for the first time in the presentation, her calm demeanor showed cracks of genuine concern. Ambassador Kilvan, I believe you are fundamentally misunderstanding the situation, she replied quietly. These humans have not developed advanced technology despite their hostile environment. Their world itself has been their military training ground for millions of years. She gestured toward the planetary analysis still glowing in the air around them. Every single day of their existence, every breath they take, every step they make, they are surviving conditions that would kill us instantly. Their bodies are living weapons forged by a world trying constantly to destroy them. Their minds are survival engines that have been trained by countless generations of impossible challenges. The chamber fell into complete silence as the terrible truth became clear. They do not need our advanced weapons or our technology, Nalthara continued. They have something far more dangerous. They have been shaped by a world that makes our worst military training programs look like children's games. Their entire species has been prepared for galactic warfare without even realizing it. The implications hung heavy in the air like a toxic cloud, and every delegate in the chamber began to understand that they might be looking at the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. The holographic display around Ambassador Nalthara shifted once again, but this time the images that appeared made even the bravest delegates in the chamber recoil in their seats. What they saw were recordings of human warfare throughout their species' history, and each battle told the same impossible story over and over again. What you are about to witness, Nalthara said grimly, represents thousands of years of human military conflicts. I want you to pay careful attention to the patterns that emerge, because they reveal something about this species that defies all known military logic. The first battle scene showed a human commander named Taemin standing on a hilltop, looking down at an enemy army that outnumbered his forces by at least 50 to 1. By every calculation known to galactic military science, his small army should have been completely destroyed within hours. Standard tactical analysis suggests this engagement should have lasted no more than 2 hours, Nalthara explained as the battle began to unfold on screen. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and had no possible escape route. Victory for the opposing force was mathematically certain. But as the delegates watched in growing amazement, something impossible happened. Taemin began using the very things that should have guaranteed his defeat as weapons. When heavy rain began falling, making movement difficult for both armies, he used the mud and poor visibility to launch surprise attacks from directions the enemy never expected. When his forces were pushed back up the hill, he used their retreat to draw the enemy into a narrow passage where their superior numbers became useless. When his weapons ran low, he convinced the enemy that retreating forces were actually reinforcements arriving from behind their lines. Notice how every disadvantage becomes an advantage in human hands, Nalthara pointed out. The rain that should weaken them becomes concealment. The retreat that should signal defeat becomes a trap. The lack of weapons becomes psychological warfare. The next scene showed an even more disturbing example. A human commander named Yijin was facing an enemy force that had surrounded her position completely. She had nowhere to run and was vastly outnumbered. Instead of surrendering or fighting a hopeless battle, she did something that made several alien delegates gasp in disbelief. Yijin began sending false messages to different parts of the enemy army, making each section believe that other sections were planning to betray them. She spread rumors about treasure that didn't exist and created fake evidence of secret alliances. Within hours, the enemy army had turned on itself and destroyed its own forces more effectively than any external attack could have managed. This human convinced an entire army to commit suicide, Nalthara said quietly. She turned their victory into their destruction without firing a single shot. She weaponized their own success against them. But the most terrifying revelations were yet to come. The display shifted to show human strategic concepts that made even the most warlike species in the council chamber shudder with horror. Humans have developed military doctrines that prioritize denial of victory over their own survival, Nalthara explained. They call one strategy, Scorched Earth. If they cannot hold territory, they destroy everything valuable on it so their enemies gain nothing. The images showed humans burning their own cities, destroying their own food supplies, and poisoning their own water sources rather than allow an invading army to benefit from them. They would rather live in ruins than allow their enemies to enjoy victory. But even more disturbing is their concept of mutually assured destruction, Nalthara continued. They have developed weapons so powerful that using them would destroy both themselves and their enemies. They are willing to end their entire civilization rather than accept defeat. The display showed the devastating weapons humans had created, devices that could split the very atoms that made up matter and turn them into explosions that could level entire cities. And the humans had built thousands of these weapons, all pointed at each other, ready to destroy their entire world if threatened. They would rather die than lose, Nalthara said simply. This is not rhetoric or posturing. This is demonstrated historical fact. The presentation took an even darker turn as it showed human medical practices that horrified the assembled aliens. Humans deliberately infected themselves with weakened versions of deadly diseases to build immunity. They cut open their own bodies to remove damaged parts and replace them with artificial components. They even transplanted organs from dead humans into living ones. When faced with disease, they do not seek to avoid it, Nalthara explained. They deliberately expose themselves to controlled doses to become stronger. When their bodies fail, they rebuild themselves with mechanical parts. When they need replacement organs, they take them from their own dead. The display showed humans launching themselves into the vacuum of space in metal containers, using controlled explosions to propel themselves away from their home planet. They sent expeditions to other worlds in their system, including ones covered in poisonous atmospheres and deadly radiation. They routinely travel through environments that would kill most of us instantly, Nalthara noted. They consider this normal exploration. But perhaps the most chilling evidence came in the form of a simple quote from a human military leader named Dong Hyun. His words appeared in glowing text across the holographic display. The only impossible thing is giving up. This appears to be their species' motto, Nalthara said. Our research indicates they have never encountered a problem they have not eventually solved, usually through methods that other species would consider completely insane. The chamber was now filled with the sounds of nervous breathing, whispered prayers in dozens of alien languages, and the soft hum of emergency life support systems as delegates struggled to process what they had learned. Ambassador Kilvan sat slumped in his chair, his scales now completely pale, staring at the holographic display with the expression of someone who had just realized they had been planning to attack the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The holographic display slowly faded away, leaving the council chamber in an eerie silence that seemed to press down on everyone present. Ambassador Nalthara stood motionless at the center of the room, surrounded by the terrified faces of delegates from across the galaxy. Even the most warlike species, those who had built their civilizations on conquest and expansion, now sat in their chairs looking like frightened children. Ambassador Kilvan, who had entered the chamber with such confidence and enthusiasm for his proposed invasion, now appeared to have aged decades in the span of a single presentation. His scales had turned completely white, and his hands shook as he gripped the arms of his chair. The easy conquest he had envisioned had transformed into a nightmare scenario that could threaten the very existence of galactic civilization. Before we proceed to any decisions, Nalthara said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying clearly through the silent chamber, there is one final piece of information that the council must consider. Several delegates visibly flinched at her words. They had already heard enough terrifying revelations about humanity to fill their worst nightmares. The thought that there could be something even more disturbing made many of them activate their emergency communication systems, preparing to warn their home worlds. Our long-range surveillance operations have detected that humans are currently entering what we would classify as their expansion phase, she continued. This means they are actively developing technologies and establishing infrastructure to spread beyond their home world. New images appeared in the air around her, showing human space installations and research facilities. A young human woman named Jinei was working in what appeared to be an advanced laboratory, surrounded by equipment that the Galactic Council's experts had initially dismissed as primitive. But closer analysis revealed something that made every military advisor in the chamber break out in cold sweats. This individual has successfully developed faster-than-light weapons delivery systems, Nalthara announced. What we initially mistook for crude chemical propulsion has been refined into technology that can strike targets across multiple star systems within hours. The images shifted to show another human, a man named Minho, overseeing the construction of what looked like small settlements on airless moons and hostile planets. But these were not simple research outposts or mining operations. The structures were heavily fortified, designed to be completely self-sufficient, and positioned at strategic locations throughout their solar system. This human has established 17 military colonies on worlds that most of our species would consider uninhabitable, Nalthara explained. Each facility is designed to operate independently for decades without support from Earth. Each one is also equipped with manufacturing capabilities to produce weapons and spacecraft. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. The humans were not just surviving on their deadly home world anymore. They were actively spreading to other worlds that were equally hostile, turning the entire solar system into a fortress that would be nearly impossible to assault successfully. But the most critical factor, Nalthara continued, is what happens when humans perceive an existential threat to their species. She activated one final display showing historical examples of human behavior during their most desperate moments. Images flashed by of humans fighting against impossible odds, refusing to surrender even when defeat seemed certain, adapting their tactics with terrifying speed when facing new threats. If we attack them now, we will accomplish something that humans have never achieved in their entire history, she said, her voice carrying a note of dread that made several delegates begin quietly weeping. We will unite their entire species against a common enemy. The chamber erupted in horrified gasps as the full magnitude of this revelation sank in. Humans spent most of their time fighting among themselves, divided into hundreds of separate nations and political groups. But faced with an external threat, their entire species would transform into a single unified military force focused on one goal: survival. Their historical records show that humans have never been more dangerous, more creative, or more determined than when they believe their species is facing extinction, Nalthara explained. They will adapt to our weapons faster than we can develop them. They will learn our weaknesses and exploit them with tactics we cannot predict. And they will never ever stop coming for us. The council speaker, his gas-filled body trembling with terror, somehow found the strength to call for an official vote. His voice shook as he spoke the words that would change galactic policy forever. All council members in favor of immediately classifying humanity as a do not engage species, please indicate now. The vote was not just unanimous, it was instantaneous. Every delegate in the chamber activated their voting systems before the speaker had even finished asking the question. There was no discussion, no debate, no request for clarification. The terror in the room was so thick it seemed to have substance. Motion passed by unanimous consent, the speaker announced, his voice cracking with strain. We hereby establish an exclusion zone of 50 light-years radius around human space. No member species shall approach, contact, or interfere with humanity in any way. He paused, struggling to control his emotions before delivering the final, chilling conclusion. May whatever gods we worship in our various faiths have mercy on us all if they ever decide that we represent a threat to them. As the delegates filed out of the chamber in complete silence, their faces showing the expressions of beings who had just stared into the abyss and realized it was staring back, the galaxy itself seemed to shift around them. The balance of power had changed forever, though the humans remained completely unaware of it. Deep in human space, billions of miles away from the terrified aliens, a young astronomer named Sujin sat in her observatory analyzing strange energy readings her equipment had detected near the edge of the solar system. The readings were unlike anything in her databases, suggesting technology far more advanced than anything humans had developed. She made careful notes in her research log and scheduled additional observation time, wondering if humanity was truly alone in the universe after all.